heard a few of the and the trials that she went through from her siblings and my mother, her daughter, but I have heard very few accounts from my grandmother herself. I have come to accept the fact that I may never hear her perspective of life as a teenager caught in the midst of war, as she is now an 81-year-old woman living with dementia. Every time that I see my grandmother, which fortunately is quite often, she tells the same 4 stories, and the story of the holy water being one of them. These stories are all a little random, and they unsystematically make their way into conversation. But she tells them to me as though it's the first time she's telling them. And so I listen to her as though it's the first time I'm hearing them. I have heard these stories so many times that I can pretty much recite them right along with her. I know when to pause. I know when to smile as she mentions her good work ethic, gasp as the container falls to the floor, laugh a little bit as to her solution, and lean in just as she whispers, because no one will ever know. Because that's how she always ends the story. It is so important that I listen to my grandmother each and every time that she tells her stories, because they represent the few memories that she still has. These stories are often the only way that she can be part of a conversation and fit into a larger dialogue. And she tells them with such excited enthusiasm. So my gift to her is listening to these stories over and over again. We live in a world where we are submerged in noise and chaos. We schedule one another into our lives. We post how we're feeling on digital walls. We are surrounded by news and thoughts, ideas, opinions, music, and car horns. And when the world finally comes to a close at the end of the night, we can still hear that faint buzz from the refrigerator and the dog barking next door. Our ears are constantly pulling in the sounds around us. And without even realizing it, we are subconsciously deciding what we will truly listen to. This past spring, I had a student from Nepal named Babita. Babita had only been in Canada for about a year, and she was only in grade 6. But she already valued her education and cherished the potential of what the English language could do for her future. We worked together in a group with other EAL students who were fairly confident in their English abilities. One day, Babita came to me and asked if she could meet with me, just her and I, one-on-one in my office. I talked to her classroom teacher, and we agreed that recess would be a great time. Just as the recess bell rang, Babita was already walking through my doorway, mid-sentence. She made her way across the room to the comfortable chair in the corner, talking all the while. She talked so much and she talked so quickly that when she finally took her first breath of air, I'm sure her lungs needed a moment to catch up. I was puzzled. And then I realized Babita hadn't come to me so that we could work on spelling. She didn't want to practice her reading. Babita didn't even want to have a conversation with me. She simply came to a place where she knew that someone would listen to her. She talked and she talked and she talked until the recess bell sounded again, and then she stood up and said, "Okay, goodbye," and left. I was rather perplexed, but all the while completely inspired. People yearn for others to listen to them. People simply want someone to be fully present when they have something to say. We gravitate to those who make the time for us. Learning how to trust. Soon, once we recognize that we are being heard, we begin to reveal our pasts, our fears, our goals, and our hopes. All of us have a need to connect, and we do that through listening because it touches every aspect of our lives. In my opinion, listening is not meant to be a difficult task, and it's not meant to be an art. Listening simply requires us to be. We don't have to respond or offer feedback or sound wise. All we have to do is stop. We need to withhold our judgments. We need to put aside our own agendas, turn off our gadgets, and silence our thoughts. And you know, it doesn't matter if we've heard it before or even something similar, because it doesn't take much to listen. Just one more time. And as a teacher, I'm given the opportunity to talk a lot. So it's my responsibility to create that room so that listening can occur. I must continually remove those obstacles and distractions that so often get in the way, which more than likely is my own voice. Listening is the foundation to meaningful relationships. And relationships are the key to growth. And growth results in the recognition of other perspectives, which then ultimately fosters peace and true, meaningful learning. And I understand that those are large concepts, but I believe that it comes back to something as simple as listen. And so I'd like to tell you a story about my grandmother. My grandmother was 18 years old when her and her family moved to Canada, just outside of Swan River, Manitoba. She was small in stature, with curled blonde hair and bright blue eyes, yet still very strong and determined. Her committed work ethic was soon noted, and quickly she was asked to work in a hospital that was operated and run by nuns. One day, it was rather quiet at the hospital, so they asked if she would go next door to the chapel and do some cleaning. She was using a broom to reach to the places that she couldn't get to on her own, and in the process, she knocked over the holy water. The water spilled everywhere. She panicked. She was so afraid of getting into trouble. And so she did the only thing that made sense to her in that moment. She picked up the container and filled it with regular drinking water, placing it back on the wall, because no one will ever know. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask to unmute you.
We're unmute.
Good. Could we all hear that?
Yeah.
What I wanted you to hear from her, besides that great story from her grandmother, was how simple listening can be, because we can make it really complicated. I can send you all these handouts and books, and I think there's important stuff there. But really the two key things are to be present and to be non-judgmental. Let me say silent. So three things: silent, present, non-judgmental. If we can just get those three things down, we can be good listeners. And all the other stuff can be icing on the cake. We can grow in it. You can become even an even better listener. And that's why I share all this stuff with you. But if you can get those three things down, and I think that's, let me just say this, Miriam, the other day, I have Waldo here sitting in my lap. Say hi, Waldo.
Hey, Bob.
I was out in the chicken coop, which is right outside her bedroom window, because I built the chicken coop, attached it to the house, so that her bedroom goes into the chicken coop. They can get their chickens if they want them. And I was frustrated because I just put this tarp up on the chicken coop last year, and the wind here had already torn it up. So I was thinking, oh man, I'm gonna have to do this every year. And so I'm outside in the nasty, muddy chicken coop with poop everywhere. And she comes to the window, and I told her, leave Waldo in the kennel unless you can get him out and watch him constantly. And she came to the window with him, and she said, Waldo just peed on my carpet. And I was frustrated and mad and angry, and I snapped at her and said, Miriam, I told you not to get him out unless you were watching him constantly. You know, I mean, I was seeing red. I was just angry, and I could see her little face drop. And I didn't even ask her what happened, you know, anything. I just immediately jumped to judgment. He did something wrong, is what I thought. And didn't listen to her, didn't even give her an opportunity to, as soon as she said he just peed on my carpet, I immediately launched into her. And
Off to the races.
yeah, off to the races. And I definitely was not present with her in that moment, because I did not see the expression on her face until 5 minutes later, when it just snapped in my head. Like, you know, I saw it sort of in a memory, and I thought, oh my gosh, what'd I do? Afterwards, I went in and this is one thing I want to tell you too. If you miss it the first time, that's okay. You can go back later and listen, because a lot of times that's what we end up having to do. Because in the moment, it's really hard to be that non-judgmental, silent presence. It gets the best of us. And I went back in after I was done and cleaned up, and I said, Miriam, come here. And had her come in my bedroom, because I wanted it just to be me and her, you know, which I wanted to be able to focus on her. Lydia was out there, my mom was out there, the dogs were out there, Eric was, and I said, come into the bedroom. And I said, you know, tell me what happened. And so she said, well, I got Waldo out, and as soon as I just took him outside and he peed, and then I put him on my carpet, and I was with him watching him, and he just peed. So see, I automatically blamed her, first of all. And I just said to her, I'm really sorry that I snapped at you. I did not mean to. And I gave her a hug and said, you know, forgive me. And she said, well, yeah, of course I forgive you, you know. And I said, I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't even take a chance, take a moment just to take a breath and listen to you. So listening sometimes happens, it can happen after we mess up. We kind of humble ourselves and go back and say, okay, I didn't do it right. Now I want to do it. Because in the moment, it's really hard sometimes to take that deep breath, do it. Sometimes what's really good, it's just what I could have done then is said, Miriam, I can't talk right now. It could have waited. I didn't have to respond to her right then, you know, but that's what happened. And we mess up and we fail, and, you know, and the good thing is that people who love us give us worth and infinite chances if we're really trying. So, but listening is simple. It's those three things. It's silence, it's non-judgmental, and it's being present. So we'll go over the materials in just a second. I just want to show you a few. Oh, I do that again.
Printed off all those materials, but
Just did the whole show.
All right.
we have a worksheet, but
I'm not gonna make the slideshow big. I'm just gonna do it.
I'm gonna see Marvin.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna read this and then get your thoughts about it. There are two parallel oh, can you all see this? Or did I stop sharing the screen?
You did.
Oh, hold on. Let me start again. Share screen. And now how do I get you all back? Shoot.
We're on the side.
There you go.
There.
Well, why don't
Over here.
I only see your names? I'm not seeing your faces. I share
Oh,
screen. Do I not get to see faces anymore?
I can see everybody's face.
Okay, well, I just can't see you. Okay. There are two parallel dialogues, two personal contacts, one with another person, the other with God. And I like to think about it as the idea of the cross. God down to us and us with one another. And at that intersection, that's what we're trying to get to. Not just with listening, but in all of our aspect of our lives. These two dialogues are closely interconnected, like the two great commandments, love towards God and love towards neighbor, which Jesus declared to be alike. Inner dialogue with God runs parallel to human dialogue and gives its meaning and value. What do you think about that? I'll read it. I'm going to read it one more time. This is a lot. There are two parallel dialogues, two personal contacts, one with another person, the other with God. These two dialogues are closely interconnected, like two great commandments, love towards God and love towards our neighbor, which Jesus declared to be alike. Inner dialogue with God runs parallel to human dialogue and gives its meaning and its. Any thoughts about that?
Unmute. We're unmuted.
Shirley?
Sometimes I talk to myself as well as to others and God.
So it's more of a stall.
Sometimes you talk to yourself as well as to, oh, so you'd throw a third one in there. Interpersonal communication.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Any
sort
other?
of see it as connecting with the idea that God is in everyone. And so if you can be speaking to a person as if you are speaking to God or Jesus, then you've connected it all together.
Yeah, and sometimes we talk about other people as God's children. But I would go a step further and say, like what you just said, Deborah, that God is in us. And so when we're listening to other people, we're not just listening to God's children, we're listening to the presence of God alive in these other people. That's how we learn from others, but also to be able to give space for God to be able to speak to us through other people by listening. So, any other thoughts?
I had a thought that kind of follows on what Deborah was saying, but I have times where I'm listening to somebody and I don't feel like I have the capacity on my own to listen to that person, whether it's because of my own baggage or because this person is just pushing my buttons. So I've had the experience where I say, God, I can't listen to this person. Can you help me out here? And I think it kind of changes your perspective. It's like, it's not just you listening to this person, maybe it's the God in you listening and responding.
Yeah, that's great.
I see it
That's-
as God is love, and the love that's in us is God.
Mhm.
And if you're listening to somebody and you really, really care about what they're saying, then you're all enveloped in God. Because if you care, you're loving them.
Mhm.
And so you're going to do your very best, sometimes inadequate, but with God's help, you know that if you are in this globe of love, you will do your best for them. I hope.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, the reason that we're able to care about people that may not be people that we like is because we remind ourselves that they too are a child of God. They too are a creation of God. They deserve our love, even if we don't really like them, or even worse, hate them, right? So our faith drives all this, I think. Now, you don't have to be a believer in God to be a good listener, but I think just like with all of life, faith makes it so much more, at least for me, so much more meaningful and gives it just drives me more, I think, to want to try harder, because I believe in a God that created, and I believe that not just my two children are
Hmm.
important in my family, but everyone are God's children. So everyone is deserves our attention. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean we're capable of giving everybody our attention. Like John said, it's we're limited in our capacity. Listening can be very draining. If you've done real listening, it's work. That's why I say it's a gift, it's a sacrifice. To sit and to listen to somebody takes energy, even though you're not doing. I mean, if you're really listening, it takes energy because your mind is, even though you're silent, your mind is active, and it can be exhausting to sit and listen. Particularly if somebody takes advantage of that and goes on and on and on.
What about evil speech? What about the person who is not in? I find it interesting what you're talking about, because where there's a yin, there's a yang. Where Zoanne was talking about love and being enveloped in love. What about the conversation that is not enveloped in love, and listening, and even if you listen, it is not God driven? What do you do with that?
Good question.
I mean, I think first of all, I don't think any of us deserve to be abused. And you'll know, I think you'll know when those opportunities come. If we, one of the things that they train us in church settings is de-escalation with, somebody who comes in to the sanctuary or just into the church, somebody who has a mental illness or somebody who seems to be just angry at religion or something. And the best way to deal with somebody in that situation, at least from what they tell us, is by being just a peaceful presence where they can spew. And now I'm not talking about somebody who's a shooter, don't get me wrong.
I've actually been involved in that situation in the church setting. And so I understand where you're talking about and what you're speaking of. But I'm talking about what is referred to vernacularly now as false news, or
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Or hate speech.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
To be kind and listen. I pray for them.
Right.
That's different. But to sit there and listen to that is, in my mind, accepting that. And I have a problem with listening to that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, remember that just because even though the other person might think that our listening means that we agree with them, again, that's their problem. Just because I'm listening to you does not mean that I agree with everything you're saying. So you have to make that connection in your mind that, me sitting here and listening to you, and you can say that I'm listening to you right now. I don't necessarily agree with everything you're saying, but I want to hear your point of view. I mean, you can say that just up front. But
I don't want to hear your point of view.
What's that?
Maybe I believe the reason I'm in this class is because I don't want to hear your point of view. I mean, at some point there is that. And
he's an honest man. Okay.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Kevin. One of the reasons I took this class is because I found myself lately, I have a feeling we're maybe similar. I feel like maybe it's my job to tell them why what they're saying maybe is immoral or unethical. But I've found myself a lot more literally in the middle of it saying, God, just give me the patience to not speak, to just, and give me the exact dead stare I need at this moment to look at this person And it kind of works, but I find my habit is to make a joke. Well, let's not get serious about anything. Let's make a joke and then we can get past it. But I
Oh,
found myself,
I agree with you, and yes, I think we are very similar. That's why.
I agree. There's times where I feel this person deserves my opinion on this issue. And
I
and
want to bless
it's
it.
very
I want
hard
to
for
bless
me,
it.
but I've tried to develop a deadpan, don't be judgmental, simply let the person speak. And it's very difficult at times. I agree.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
and if
I
I
think-
can throw in, Kevin, what you're talking about, I think is very similar to what I go through. Not so much now, but I work at the health department. So, and I answer the phone. So
Good time.
you can imagine some of the quote unquote conversations that I have been subjected to over the last 22 months. And I have found myself trying to develop that skill of, I used to let it really upset me. I mean, people have said things to me that literally, like, I would hang up and go back into my office and cry.
Sure.
And then I think, okay, so first of all, that's what they want. You know, they're just trying to get my goat. But I realized that it's more effective if I actually listen to them. So, and that's why I thought this class was really well timed, because I do try to listen. I don't try to, you know, they're not calling to really get my opinion or to get any information, but it seems to diffuse well if I do just listen and acknowledge. And then if it just won't go anywhere, I just say, you know, I really appreciate your call today, but I believe that our conversation is done. And so I'm just going to let you go. And then I just end the call. But I've stopped trying to reason. I just listen. And I think that's a lot of times what they're looking for, is no matter how irrational they are.
Yeah, I think
So-
that I want to move us back to, I appreciate the question because it's important. I think that I do have a lot of hope that us being listeners to people who we encounter can bring some positive change into the lives of people who we love and care about, who are very close to us, and those who have very different points of view from us. You know, people are not going to listen to us, especially somebody who's not a good listener anyway, but people are not going to listen to us unless we take that first step and try to understand who they are and why they think the way they do. And it may lead to something that we think is just crazy or evil or wrong. But I would still encourage us at least to just try some of this stuff out and see what happens. And you can always, like I said, you can always say, oh, I think I've heard what you said. I understand that you think this, and I know you feel very strongly about this, and you know, this is what you want, and this is what you're hoping for, you know, kind of tell it back to them so they know that you got it. I think we just might disagree. Would you be willing to listen to, you know, how I see it? And they'll probably say, I don't want to hear anything, you know, or they might say, yeah, you know what? I've never had somebody just sit down and really give me the floor for 20 or 30 minutes. I really appreciate it. I mean, that's probably not going to happen. But what we have that's different than what people are seeing through all the misinformation that's out there is they're getting all this stuff from, you know, from watching videos and Facebook. They don't have maybe a real person sitting there and actually giving them the time to, you know, making them feel like they're important enough. And I think a lot of what people are really missing is just a human connection, and we can be that human connection through listening, but not agreeing. Don't get me wrong. I have to sit all the time. I mean, Kelly knows, you know, and everybody who's worked with people, and you know, you're a contractor or you've been done contracting. You have to sit sometimes and just listen to stuff and you think, God, you know.
If you have a mother-in-law.
Or mother-in-law, right. And but the best way to get through those, the best way to really have something change in the direction that we want it to, or to work out for the better, is for us to kind of shut down and not internally, but just verbally and be a presence. I've just seen it too many times where I've sat and somebody listened to me or somebody spew at me in the church about something. And I could have immediately said, you're wrong because this and this and this and this, and I didn't. I just let them talk 10, 15 minutes, made sure that I got back to them what they had said so they felt like they had been heard. And the problem went away over and over and over again. And I never had to do anything else about it. So it doesn't always happen that way, but
With pendant lines.
try it and see. Okay, let me get into the material so we can cover what I sent to you.
It's pretty.
I'm going to pull it up here and hopefully
No,
I can still see you. I'm not sure why when I share my screen that I can't. Let me try it. Let's see. Let's see, you're gone again.
There you go.
You try gallery view, Tony?
And let's see.
Yeah. But
You're sharing screen. Yes, I get.
let's see, so I'm gonna print.
Let me stop and try again. This
I
is
was wondering, I was wondering if everybody's printed it out.
We haven't yet, but I'm doing it right now.
I did.
We
I
do.
did.
I have it in front of
Oh,
me.
everybody has it?
Yeah, well, I
Oh,
do.
that. Okay.
I do.
That makes it much easier. Okay,
Everybody hold up their picture.
good. Okay, so what you're gonna look at first of all is the awareness wheel, that big circle. That's the
Yeah.
first one.
It's a flower.
The flower, yeah.
Downstairs.
Yeah, the big wheel.
If you have a pen and you have it printed out, at the top underneath the awareness wheel, will you write pray?
Said pray?
Pray, P-R-A-Y, just pray, right under awareness wheel. When we're sitting and we're listening to somebody, again, this seems very mechanical, but it becomes more natural the more we kind of practice it. What they told us to do was, you start with the sensory data and then you go through thoughts and then you work on the feelings and then you work on their wants and then you try to figure out actions. This is really when somebody has an issue that they're coming to talk to you about and you're trying to help them work through it. Which I don't know about you all, but that happens pretty regularly. Somebody in my life will come and say, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. It may be a coworker, it may be a family member, or there may be an issue that I need to talk to somebody else about. And so we can use this not just for listening, but for speaking to help somebody else hear us. So rather than starting with sensory data, though, I like to start with prayer. That doesn't mean we say, okay, hold on, before you start talking, let's pray together. I don't mean that. I mean, if you're going to meet with somebody and to have a conversation about something where there's an issue or an issue comes up, it's really simple just to stop and tell yourself, I'm getting ready to listen. God, I invite you into this. You can say that in your head. Just invite God's presence into it. It will make a huge difference. Because one, what it will do is it will make you remember, oh yeah, I need to kind of remember some of these skills that we talked about, or I need to just stop. If nothing else, I need to remind myself, I need God's help to be a present, silent, non-judgmental entity in this issue. But so just pray up there. Okay, so let's go into these just a little bit. And I'm going to ask you to turn to the page that says sensory data at the top, or sensations, your sensory data. You like third, fourth page, everybody see that? It's the first piece of the pie.
A flower.
Of the flower, thank you. First petal of the flower. When we're listening or when we're trying to communicate with somebody else, the sensory data is very important to the conversation or to listening. It says on the page there that you gather data from other people as their facial expressions, gestures, postures, movement, scent, tone, words, these are all the things, the sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. These are all pieces of the listening process. And sometimes the sensory data can be a lot more than the actual words that come out of somebody's mouth. You probably always heard that communication is like 30% words and 70% nonverbal communication. It's the body language is the part. But when you're talking about an issue too, and you're trying to gather the story about the issue, that's also that data that you're trying to collect. Before you get what their thoughts are, what their feelings are, before you work through all that, you're just trying to get the story, whatever the story is, Let's go back to the Miriam situation. The sensations were that Miriam, not what she thought or but what she said to me was, Waldo just peed on my carpet. That's the sensory data. That's what I heard. Now I heard it and I saw her face. The other sensory data was she looked terrified. That's what I saw at the time. What she saw me doing was standing in thick mud and chicken poop. It stunk. That was the sensory data. That's probably why I was more angry too, because it stunk out there. Just pay attention to this stuff. You don't have to memorize this stuff or anything. It's just when you're trying to, when somebody says, hey, there's this problem I'm working on, and you say, tell me about it, that's where you're gathering the information. It's just where you start. That's where you begin. Maybe it may not be good to say, well, tell me how you're feeling about this issue before you actually know all the details about the issue. Remember, we're trying to get inside of their head, and we may not have seen what happened. And even if we saw what happened, we may not have seen it the way that they saw it. So part of listening is just collecting the story. What did you see when we were talking, or when this happened? What did you see, or what did you hear? What were the words you heard? Sometimes you can kind of deal with the issue just by that. Somebody said, I'm really angry, I'm really upset. Well, what did you hear? And then they say to you what they heard, and you go, oh, wait. That was not at all what was said. Let me tell you what was said. So we start there. We also want to look at, just pay attention to people's facial expressions. If somebody tells you that, you ask them, how are you doing today? And they say good, and they have tears in their eyes. You can say to them, you say that you're doing good, but you have tears in your eyes. And sometimes that just opens the floodgate. So it says here, other external data include context, time, place, sound, others that were present. That's something when you're trying to help somebody work through an issue. Tell me about the people who were there, and what did other people see? What did other people hear? Where did this take place at? Again, it's just you're trying to sort of get a newspaper story. If you really want to listen, that's where you start, by collecting all that information. That's enough about that one. I won't go into
Who, what, when, where, and why.
yeah, that kind of stuff. And
one of the things I wanted to mention was the Miriam story is you didn't get all the sensory data because you weren't listening thoroughly.
Mhm.
So it's important to collect that data
Yes. Mhm.
to have actually looked past it.
Right. Good. Yeah. Good
Because-
point.
Because, and it was interesting because that can be sometimes, as you just said, that'll tell you so much of the story as well as the words, is their physical way they present the story.
Mhm.
And you had missed some of that with Miriam,
Yes.
and boy, I'm never guilty of that.
And that's why if I could have just stopped for a moment and just asked God for grace,
It would have been all good.
it would have been all different. And it really would have. But we have reptilian brains, right? Everybody heard about that? You know,
Oh, yeah.
the most ancient part of our brainstem is still that fight or flight. And I was in fight mode at that moment. Not with, well, sort of with Miriam, but more with the dog and kind of with her. And I was standing in chicken crap, and really hard to be holy when you're standing in chicken crap.
Or listen.
Or listen, yeah. Okay, let's move on to thoughts. I need to get thoughts. Okay, it starts on the top. It says internal data, bodily sensations. Everybody see that one?
No,
It's the next page.
It's the second piece of the pedal or the pie. It says thoughts, the meaning you make. Good.
Call from Nancy J.
Nancy.
I'm just gonna mute her. Okay. Sensory, it says here, sensory data also comes to your awareness from inside your own body. For example, physical pain, goosebumps, fatigue, hunger, a chill or fever. You don't need it's just more of just paying attention, just being, it's that sense of being present. If we're present, then we experience our own internal sensations. But we're also trying to pick up on the sensations of others that they're giving to. This intuitive sensation, some of us are really good at that, being intuitive. Some of us think we're good at that, and we're really not. And then some of us are really good at being intuitive. So I won't talk much about that. Just thoughts. And then at the bottom here, it says 3 basic forms of thoughts correspond generally with your past, present. Yeah, they talked about all this. Really, again, this is just the question. Okay, you've told me everything, or we've talked about all the details about this. What do you think about this? That's all you're saying. That's really all you need to know, is that a good thing to do kind of when you moved on from, you're gathering all the information, if you're listening to somebody, to say, and so what do you think about this? What are your thoughts? Or you've shared all this with me. Is there anything else I need to know about this? Okay, so what do you think about all this? And they will tell you. That's really all you need to know. Second question you're asking, or second thing you're paying attention to, or what are the thoughts? Or if you're sharing a story or an issue with somebody, you're trying to communicate with somebody and you've given them all the details, and then you say, and so all that happened, I heard all that, and then I thought, da 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 da. Okay. What were my thoughts when in the midst of all that sensation that day? My thought was that Miriam was being irresponsible, and that got the dog out and just let him run around. That was my thought. I was wrong. How did that make me feel? Angry. Move on to feelings. Angry. The most important thing I want us to get here is, because this is where we have the hardest time. We're really good at gathering information. We're really good at telling people what we think about stuff. What we tend to have a hard time doing is connecting our feelings to it. And what we end up doing a lot of times is we end up confusing thoughts, feelings. And so in your sheet, or in your packet that I gave you, if you go back towards the beginning, I think it's the second or third
Second
page.
page. That's the
Yeah,
second page.
Second page there says thoughts are often feelings.
That was a biggie.
Yeah, I feel rejected. I feel threatened. Let's see, what is it? Errors are common language. These are thoughts. To feel rejected is a analytical thought. There is a feeling that's deeper than the feeling of I feel rejected. I felt threatened again. That they're just saying, hey, that's a thought. Let's get to the feeling part of it. I thought, because you can say, I thought I was threatened. I thought I was rejected. And a lot of times, if you feel rejected, the feeling behind that might be, go to the next page.
I have a question about that, Tony.
Uh-huh.
Seems like you could really get somebody annoyed at you if you start picking away at their use of words. So somebody might say after a spouse has left them, let's say, and they say, I feel so rejected. Seems like if you say, well, now let's drill down. Now, do you feel angry? And I mean, it's like,
Yeah, right. No. Yeah,
could
so
get in trouble with that.
I mean, what I would do is say, something like, I can't imagine how that feeling of rejection must be to you, or must have felt you. It probably made you feel really, and you throw a word out there. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, because sometimes people have a hard time connecting to that deeper feeling. And when you give them that word, then they go, yeah, that is how I feel. So we don't want to, again, we're not going to correct them and say, yeah, I know you're telling me you feel rejected, but rejection isn't a feeling. Instead, saying something like, when somebody says they feel rejected, what do you think they mean by it? Like a feeling? Look at that page that has that list of feelings that says on the left, love, joy, surprise, anger, sadness, fear, and then it gives you a whole bunch of feelings. What might be something there that would fit with somebody who's felt who is having this thinking or is using the feeling of rejection? What might be a better word to really get at the heart of the feeling from that list?
Disrespected.
Huh?
Disrespected.
It's not on this list.
Oh, it's not in the list. But that's how it could feel.
I like
Right.
that one, Ted.
Right now, we're going to use the list.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
I would feel abandoned.
yeah.
Could be rage or like Beth said.
Wait, is that on the list?
That's
Yeah.
on the list.
Okay,
It should
So
be.
I just want to say, that page, when the thoughts are often confused with feelings,
yeah,
I was having a lot of trouble with the difference. And so at the bottom of that page, it says, here's a partial list of some thought words that are commonly expressed as emotions. As you read over the list, identify the emotions, sometimes strong emotions, that often accompany these thoughts. And so I went through that box. It's a box on the bottom. And I tried to write under each word the feeling,
The feeling.
because I was having trouble separating.
Me too.
For instance, the first one is abandoned, and I thought, all right, so then I would say I wrote afraid. I couldn't even fill in all of them, but cheated, angry, childish, foolish. I thought that was a really a good exercise to try to identify the feelings with the words, because the emotions with the
Yeah.
feeling. And that box was really helpful. So sorry about
yeah.
interrupting.
Think about it this way. A lot of times, our thoughts that we sometimes confuse our feelings as feelings are actions that we can do to someone else. So in other words, we can abandon somebody. We can't fear somebody. We can make somebody afraid, but we can't fear someone. I mean, I can fear somebody, but I can't, you hear what I'm saying? I can abandon you, but I can't emotion the fear. I can't do that to you. I have to do something to you in order to make you feel.
Fearful.
Okay, so
So it's
abandon
it's that idea of action versus feeling. The other reason that this is important, I think the only reason this is important is because you have the opportunity by giving people feeling words to help them connect with themselves in a deeper way. And sometimes that's all people need. Sometimes all people need is a word to be able to identify the emotion that they're feeling. And sometimes you, because you're on the outside and you're listening to them and you're hearing their thoughts, they might say, I feel abandoned. And you can come back and say, yeah, I would feel very afraid. And they go, yeah, I do feel afraid. And see, it kind of pushes it just to a little bit of a deeper level. Now, what we don't like to do in our American society, and I don't know about other societies, is we don't like to touch those emotions, right? We like to stay right above them in that thought process. But if we're really going to listen to somebody, we're really going to help somebody kind of connect with themselves and move to a deeper level, we want to throw some of these words out. Now, in this list here, this long list, which you don't have to memorize these, they're helpful. On the left, it has the kind of big emotion: love, joy, surprise, anger, sadness, fear. Those are okay. That's enough. If you can kind of tuck those away, the nice thing is that some of these are Advent candles. Love and joy. But if you can tuck those away, to just pull those out at the right time when somebody says, I felt what were some of the ones they set up here? Betrayed, I felt challenged, I felt cheated. If you can say, yeah, and I bet that betrayal made you feel really angry. That kind of stuff, just simple. Now, if you want to, and you want to go through and put some of those other words in there, a really good counselor, that's what a really good counselor can do. They'll go and they'll have all these emotion words in their heads, and they'll be listening to go, when I heard you say that, it brought up a sense of, spite. Are you feeling pretty spiteful right now? Like, whoo, ding, ding, ding. That's exactly it. But it's okay to just say angry. You don't have to get all the way down to the, just move somebody to that one emotion. Help them move to that one emotion to connect with it.
These lists are really cool, and I think they do help kind of crystallize some of the thoughts, but every time I've been in a conversation, it's a whole lot messier than this.
Feeling.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah. And as I'm talking about it, don't think that I told the Miriam story, just so you know that just because I know this stuff does not mean that I always go there. When somebody comes and sits in my office and I can do, pastoral counseling with them, I'm much better because I'm sort of detached from the situation a little bit. When it's going on in my life, I have to do a lot of what I did with Miriam, come back 10 minutes later when I've calmed down and kind of remind myself what I need to be doing here, which is why it's okay to say, give me 10 minutes, give me 30 minutes. I need some time. That's one of the best things we can do in listening, is just say, I need a break. I need a break because I'm not going to be a very good listener right now. Let's come back to this in a moment. And then when you've gathered yourself and you've prayed and you're ready, then you can do it. Or if you screwed up, then you can start with, I'm sorry. I'm in a better place right now. Can we talk about that again? And we can go through it. And what I want you to hear from this is just, again, you don't have to have this list memorized. One thing that's helpful, what I do in counseling sometimes, is I'll pull this list out because I don't remember all this stuff. And I'll say, can you help me understand how you felt? Which emotion on here do you think matches, and they'll study it, until they find just the right one. I think revulsion. Wow, I would have never said revulsion. That helps me understand how you feel, because you gave me that word, and it helps them understand. I didn't think I felt revulsion over this, but I do. Yeah, I'm angry, but I'm really feeling revulsion from this. Now, you're not going to do that in a conversation with,
You could always
family
say,
member.
By the way,
I'm in this great listening class, and can you help me out with this? I'm going to try out this new tool I got.
Yeah, right. There you go. Mhm. Hold on, let me get this card out of my pocket. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this or anything I've said? I just want to keep this for 10 more minutes. Is that okay? 10 more minutes?
Oh, yeah.
good.
Okay, so
Yeah,
let me get your questions and feedback first. I think, Kevin, did you have something that you were going to ask or say? Okay, sorry. Anybody else? Okay. Before we move on, well, actually, no, let's move on. Let's go on to okay, the feelings. Again, the feelings is not to memorize. The point is not to memorize these. It's just to get people to move from their thoughts to their feelings. You can understand how they felt. Because if you understand how they felt, they feel like they're important to you. They feel like they've been heard, and sometimes you can help them to connect. And just being able to connect with that feeling can help them really just naming it to be the thing that kind of fixes everything, even if the problem itself is not fixed. Okay, so let's move on to wants. You've listened to the story, you've heard everything about it, you know all the details, you know what they think about it, you know how they feel about it. And so now maybe that's enough. And maybe that's where you stop. Maybe there's no need to go on. A lot of times it is. But if you're trying to kind of come to a solution, this is where we move on to the last two parts of the awareness wheel. So their wants. And again, you can just say, you know, that's it, you know, let's go back to the Miriam thing for a second. When she came back in and I said, I was sorry. And I said, you know, when you told me that I was out there in the chicken poop, I'm so sorry I got upset. I was thinking that you weren't paying any attention to him. And now you're telling me that you were. So it wasn't your fault. It was his fault. It just made me feel really angry because I've been working so hard on trying to, you know, watch him like a hawk. And what I want is I want to get him house trained. And and what do you want? You know, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, of course I want to get him house trained. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is just kind of clarifying what our wants are in this thing. I want to make sure, and I think you're telling me this, Miriam, but I want to make sure that when you get him out, that you're following these guidelines that we put down. If Waldo comes out in the house, all eyes are on Waldo, or Waldo goes in the kennel. Because we're trying to get him potty trained so that we can move beyond this stage. I want to be able to have a dog in the house that knows that he's not supposed to go to the bathroom inside. I'm just sharing this with Miriam just so that she understands what I want, why I got so angry, you know, why it's so important to me. You might think, well, this is all common sense, but sometimes we don't share what our wants are. Sometimes we don't listen to what the other person's wants are in a situation. Part of listening is trying to understand what the person wants, what they desire. They say here on this page, common words associated with wants are aspirations, dreams, drives, goals, hopes, intention. They go on. So, you know, if you're talking with a spouse about some issue, or somebody who you're really close to, that might be more where you use these more intimate words like your dreams, your hopes. What are your hopes for our relationship? What are your dreams for our relationship, for our family, for our future, those kind of things. Again, this doesn't take a lot of skill. It just takes more of a commitment to putting this in practice. 3 types of wants they say down here with examples: to be, to do, and to have. Again, there's no reason to memorize these. I think it's just more something for you to think about. With the Waldo situation, my want, you know, in that case, if I wanted to break it down into those 3 specific things, my want was to not be angry all the time because he's peeing in the house. That's one of my wants. That's a state of being, right? What I want to do in this situation is, like I said, you've already heard me say, I want to always have the eyes on the dog unless, or he's in the kennel. That's what I want to do. And that's what I want Miriam to do too. And what I want to have a dog that makes our life happy rather than makes our thing. So again, it's just another way of breaking it down so that you can further get into the other person's mind and head. All these things do is just help you to be able to try to see the other person's perspective. Again, going back to people who think really differently from us in life and think things that that we're just, you know, completely opposed to, that we consider to be evil. Might be interesting to hear. Heard their thoughts and their feelings, if you can stomach it. What do you want? What is it that you want for you and for your family? What is it you want, to do? What do you want to have? Just to hear them. Now, I'm not saying I may not agree with them, but might be interesting to at least hear it.
Tony, just a quick comment about what do you want? That seems to really stop people dead in their tracks sometimes and kind of like shakes them into a sense of, what do I want? I've been talking for 30 minutes, but I haven't really articulated what I want. So I think that's a kind of a useful one.
Yeah, that's a good way to like, let's see. All right. We've been here for 30 minutes and yeah, good point, John. So what do you want? Yeah, what do you want out of that? You tell me all this story and I appreciate it. And what are you hoping for? That kind of thing. Let's wrap it up. Yeah. And sometimes they don't know what they want. They don't even realize in the issue that they get to have a want sometimes, and it's like, oh, thanks for asking me that.
I got to think about that.
Say more about that. Unless you want to think more before you say more. Hear me, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, no, I said you have to think about it. You want to say more about it or you want to think more?
No, I just did. No, I think it's one of those. So often when they ask you ask them for their want.
Oh,
They
I
come
see what you're
back
saying.
with, I actually have to think about that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
That's where that was from, because I've actually done that, and that is the reaction you get. And you've got to give them the time to think about it and continue the conversation.
Yeah, and
you've now given them an opening they've never had before.
Yeah. And they might say, even just along those same lines, I don't really know. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe if you have time, you can say, well, you want to talk about it some more? Unless you're exhausted. But maybe they need more clarity. And you can be that mirror, to kind of help them get there. Think about how many people do this for you in your life, who will really sit and listen to your thoughts and your feelings, other than a counselor.
Yeah.
Not very
I bet
many.
you.
You have a few, yeah.
I do. I had an interesting conversation this past week. A friend of mine is a counselor. She's a social worker. She's been trained in this. And she was so excited. I was taking this class on listening. And I said, all right, let me run this by you. She asked me a couple of weeks ago, she and her husband, to come over to their new house and walk around and give them some of my ideas about what they could do with their house. Well, she was very, very upset about leaving old house, moving into new house. And the more she talked, the more I heard her say she really wanted to be back in the old house. And so I said to her, and this was a month ago, I said, I've really listened to you. And what I'm hearing you say is that you loved your old house. So why not try to recreate the kitchen colors, yada, yada, that you had before, because you loved it so much. And she said, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? So, and that's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going into this thinking, all right, Zoanne, you need to keep your mouth shut. You need to listen more. But in that situation, I did listen,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave her an opinion, and it was perfect for both of them. So I said to her, I'm trying to be quiet, which for me is a real challenge. And she said, oh, Zoanne, you're a very good listener. And I said, oh, I don't think so. She said, you just negated what I said. So I said, I said, I hear that. I appreciate that very much. And then I didn't say, I think you're wrong.
But that's what you were thinking.
But,
But
well,
so I gave her an opinion after listening to all of this stuff. Now they invited it. They invited the opinion, but
yeah, and
and it
I wouldn't say that was giving her your opinion. I would say what you did was tell her what she was saying she wanted. You just wrapped it up in your own language. I mean, that's what I'm
yeah.
hearing anyway, is that you're saying this is what she wanted, not because you prescribed it to her, right? But because you listened to her and you heard what she wanted.
Yeah.
It is the perfect
Even-
example of what the next step of this is. If somebody asks you, what do you think? You're not giving them your opinion, you're giving them their opinion back.
Yeah,
Feedback.
right. Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
What do you think? Well, I think you gotta know. Well, I think it sounds to me like what you want is da, da, da,
what you
da, da.
had.
Is that
The
right?
recap of what they just said, is that what you mean? And then
Yeah, and it was.
Now they might say, I don't really know what I want. You know, I trust you in this because you've been through this before, you've done this, you're an expert in this, you know. Tell me what you think I should do, what you think. And again, that's fine. Okay, I mean, tell them, you know, as long as you've gone through the process of listening. I think what I'm trying to get us away from is just jumping to conclusions at the beginning of a conversation. And a lot of times we do it, most of the time we do it, it's not because we don't have the skills to do it. It's because we don't think it's important. We don't value the other person enough. We value ourselves more than the other person, or we don't have the time for it. I could create. It's not, again, I want you here. I'm giving you all these skills, but if you have the right intention from the start, you know, you might recognize, I want to do this stuff, but I really don't know how to. So I'm going to kind of study this stuff and read about it. And maybe you need that. That's okay. But a lot of us already have the capability and capacity to do this. Just putting a little bit of structure on it can kind of give some clarity for us as we're listening. And just starting out with the right intention, I think.
what's the word I was gonna use? It's all about it.
I mean, the fact that you're taking the class, that's going to make you a better listener, not because of what I'm telling you, but because you're choosing to take the class. It means that you have a desire to listen, and you'll remember that next time you have a conversation with somebody. Even if you don't, even if you skip to once before you get to feelings, or you do, you know, sensory data, don't worry about all that stuff. It's good.
I
Yeah,
have
Kathy.
a success story to tell you already.
Good. Let me do one thing, and then I'm going to ask for your
Yes,
responses.
We can wait.
No, I want to hear it because I asked you all if you had anything happening to let me know. Just let me say one last thing about this and then I'll be done talking. The actions, again, that's just, okay, so I heard what you wanted about it. So now you're going to move them on to, now what are you going to do about it? Just moving them to action if you feel like that's a place, helping them move to action, helping them put a plan together. They'll invite you into being a part of the plan making if they feel like you've listened and heard them. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. We just don't want to start, we don't want to start with the actions first before we do all the other stuff. That's what we tend to do, is say, oh, I'll tell you what to do. Okay, Kathy, and anybody else who wants to share
Okay.
any stuff.
So Kevin had an issue that he wanted my opinion on how to handle. And he says, this is my issue. What do you think I should do? And I start to talk and he says, this is what I think we should do. And I know you can't imagine that this happened.
And yes, I'm sitting here, so, you know, this is.
So, but the success is, as soon as those words came out of his mouth, he stopped and he heard himself and said, oh, wait.
I really want to hear what you
I
have
would
to
like
say.
to
Yay!
Let
Kevin.
me have my thing. And I said my piece. And then he said, and this was my idea. And we talked about the ideas and moved on. It was awesome.
But
I
it
was
was-
very proud of him.
It was pretty funny,
I
is
mean,
all I can
I
say,
mean,
and
he
if
really
nothing else.
stopped. It was like,
yeah.
oh, whoa, what did I? Whoa. So thank you. I appreciate it.
And that was enough, right?
It was great.
That was
it.
enough. That's what I want y'all to hear. That was enough. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um,
We
Did
went
you all-
with what he said,
did you all
but-
watch the did you watch the video clip from Everybody Loves Raymond? Did you get a chance to see
Mhm.
that?
Yes.
If not, watch it. It's hilarious because it makes
It's
fun of,
really
it kind
funny.
of makes fun of what we're doing here, and I think it's
Big time.
yeah. Anybody else have a story where you tried to put some listening into practice this week, Shirley? Oh, you're muted, so you gotta unmute. Hold on, Shirley. Hold on,
Kidding.
Shirley. Hold on, Shirley. Shirley, wait. You gotta unmute. Here you
I'm sorry.
There you go. Okay, now we can hear you.
So Ann, you told us the story about the woman who was screaming and yelling because people were trying to comfort her. It was just the opposite for the
Oh.
situation that we had.
Wonderful.
And it
Good.
turned out so well that
Aw.
these people, little group of people want to do this on a weekly basis, not necessarily just for because someone died, but for us to get together and chat. So it
That's
turned out really, really well.
great.
Hey, that's
I was
exciting.
very pleased. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. You hit
And
her
I'm-
at the right time in just the right way.
Yeah.
I'm sure that made
Good.
you feel happy and joyful and all those other wonderful feelings.
All those things, yes. In fact, my son-in-law came with his guitar and was going to play music, but there was so much talking going on, he couldn't get a note in edgewise. He just picked up his guitar and left after our meeting.
Oh, he made me feeling sad and rejected.
Yeah.
Good. Anyone else have a example from this week where you used any of this stuff?
We have a partial example.
Yeah.
Well, it was time to put up the Christmas lights.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
And Ted came up from the basement with the lights in his hands, and he was about to go out and put them along the fence, the top of the fence, which I had mentioned maybe was one idea, or we could do that. So that we eventually landed on, the issue was, where do the lights go this year? And we kind of went through a little bit, but we jumped pretty quickly into just discussion and reasons for maybe not putting them on the fence. They ended up on the ground, lighting the pathway to the front door.
Oh,
So it was really a simplified, maybe, solution to an issue that could have been major.
I'm always agreeable if it's easier.
Ted, I thought you were going to say they're going to go back down in the basement. That was very good.
Well, I haven't decided yet about next week. I may, for those who want to, I may invite us to gather so we can do try a couple of these things with each other, kind of having some breakout, and 'cause it helps to put it into practice and to pull out some of this stuff. And now that you all know some of it, to kind of help guide each other, because if you do the practice part of it, then it makes it all kind of come together. So we may try to do that next week. There is something on Zoom called breakout rooms. I need to look into that. That's where I can send you all. We're still on Zoom, but I send you into just where it's two of you. We might be able to do it that way, but I'm kind of, I'll let you know. So,
Tony,
yeah.
I've used the breakout rooms for several classes that I've taken, and it's very effective.
Okay, so we might be able to do it that way. So we'll, I need to read more about that. If we can do it that way, I may prefer to do that because that keeps us all from having to leave our house and drive back to the church and all that. And then I can still record it and be on here. you haven't read the book, we'll have a conversation sometime to talk about this in the last class, just to give you a date when you should have it finished by. Again, my hope is that this is supplementing all that we're talking about. So, any last minute questions or thoughts? All right.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.